but I just wanted to dive into this painting a little bit closer for you and talk about why I love it so much, what makes it work so well. Obviously, it's just an amazingly beautiful, fresh, painterly watercolor. Everything is so clean and decisive. This A Quiet Canal in Venice by none other than Trevor Chamberlain. Every time I page through that book of his, Light and Atmosphere in Watercolor, when I come to this page, I just stop and look at this painting. It's by far my favorite one in there. I mean, there's many that I just absolutely love, but this one in particular is just an absolute masterpiece for so many reasons. And anyways, I just thought I'd talk about some of the more formal elements in here, instead of just saying, wow, this is beautiful, which it is, but just kind of break it down a little bit more for you, what makes it work. So when you're talking about paintings, this isn't a full list of everything that judges and things look at when they're talking about paintings and what makes it work, and art critics and stuff, but just basically design, color harmony, edges, shapes, and balance are a few of the big important ones that I kind of consider when I'm looking at paintings. And we'll just go ahead and start off with design here and the way he's designed this paintings. So number one, it's just when you talk about that kind of rule of thirds, when you divide your paper space in thirds, side to side and top to bottom, those intersecting little spots here where these lines intersect are the nice areas for the main areas of interest, okay, where you want to put them. And the bridge is obviously one area of interest, and that's kind of residing right here, but those really strongly light struck boats in the foreground are smack dab right at that little lower right corner down there. So the design works just absolutely beautifully in that regard. The division of space and everything divided by thirds, and nothing is really dead center, okay? Also, look at the way he just manages to lead your eye in the painting and through it. Your eye just there's interesting things to look at all the way through. It just keeps traveling in from this side. Also notice it doesn't come right from the corner, okay, down here. And it's up a little bit higher. Same thing down here. This wall comes a little bit higher than the corner over there. So nothing is going to the corners. It kind of, your eye starts over here and starts leading in to the scene that way and stops on the boats. And you just kind of marvel at the handling of those boats for a little while and what makes them so convincing and painterly. And then you continue on through more boats. This one, the shapes are all different here. These beautiful pillars reaching up. And then your eye just kind of settles on these other boats and the light over here, some more sunlight. And then from there you go up and over the bridge over here to the lone figure in the scene, another little area where you just kind of stop and notice what's happening. And then you come down along the wall here and the fence and these amazingly painted steps going down into the water, and kind of leading the eye to this darker reflection area right here. And then even the reflection starts to continue on over, and you start all over again. You're just continually going through this painting and noticing gorgeous things everywhere you go. And that's important, and it goes back to what I talk about. People say, what's your center of interest or your focal point? I don't like that term, focal point. I love it when the eye kind of travels through the painting. There's just beautiful things throughout to interest you. And now, yes, you do want to, ideally, these big boats that are in the sunlight here, that's a main area of interest. The bridge over here, that's another main area of interest. Okay, but it doesn't have to be a focal point, one thing. Like I said, I kind of like it when the eye can travel through the painting a little bit and enjoy it. And there's just definitely so much happening in this scene. Most of the sharply defined shapes are in the center area right here. Okay, they're residing in here. Once you get beyond that area, all the contrast, or most of the contrast and everything, is in there. After you go out of there, the contrast is much more subtle. Okay, the shadow on the steps down here, they're defined, but not nearly as bright of a contrast as what you have going on in the boats. The figure is defined a little bit, but not nearly as much as those areas. You come up in here to the top, and it's all vague. Even up here, the contrast between the windows and that little balcony and stuff is a little bit stronger, but because that balcony is in shadow, again, that contrast is not nearly as strong as the contrast down here or over here, okay, or even back here in this area. So keeping the eye in the painting and not adding too much contrast or things that are going to suck the viewer's eye over to the boundaries, that's very important as well. All right, so design-wise, this painting works beautifully. Whoops. Moving along. Second thing, color harmony. The color choices, those complementary colors, that gold and that kind of neutral violet that permeates this whole scene, it's almost just a two-color painting, really. You've got the varying tones of that gold, kind of quinacridone gold and burnt sienna and things in there, that orangey warm color, and then obviously the same goes for the violet. But notice that the violet doesn't have to be screamingly intense. Okay, all the purples in here are very, very subtle. Okay, that is not a very strong purple at all anywhere in here. They're very neutralized. That's so important, okay, because the strong golds in the sunlight are very vibrant. If the purples were that vibrant, the painting would be it would be too much visually. It would kind of vibrate visually, really, where you don't know where you want the viewer to look. Do you want them to look in the areas of the sunlight, or do you want them to look in the areas of the shadow? Okay, you need to keep that hierarchy in mind. And in this case, that strong golden sunlight coming in and hitting some of the gondolas in the wall, that's where he wanted you to notice. And then because those areas are so strongly intense with the golds and the browns, those purples look pretty strongly purple. But if I just grabbed a little section of one of those, and cut that out, see if I can do that here. Let's see. And just kind of move that purple down into a little area of white paper down here. That's nothing, okay? That is not a very strong purple at all. It's almost a gray color, right? So yeah, that's another thing that's very important to keep in mind as well. And I talked about that when I did my monthly deliverable on some of my earlier paintings, and how I didn't understand the power of neutrals and the importance of it. Everything was too garish, too colorful. So obviously this painting works on many levels in that regard. Beautiful color harmony. Edges, my goodness, I could go on and on and on about the edges in this painting, okay? Again, the sharpness, where he wants the viewer to kind of stop and notice all the sharp edges in the sunlight, the contrast down there. Okay, those are the areas that you notice most primarily. He didn't have to define the top of all the way to the top of this light boat. He painted this dark shape right here above part of it, and there's nothing right here. Basically, you got that very subtle line on the interior of the boat, but this is an unfinished, kind of a lost edge there. Your mind just fills in the blank because this shape defined part of the top of that hull. The lost edges down in the back of here, that is so beautiful and subtle. Okay, it didn't have to be super sharp on that back end. That's almost a lost edge there, very similar to the lost edge from the boat down to its reflection. Even this is a very subtle, soft edge between the two shapes. It's not too harsh. It's a little bit stronger down here, but you can tell that he's working on paper that's just slightly damp, and his control of the medium and the timing and everything that it takes to get that is unbelievable. Even something as subtle as having these shapes, these pillars, that are out here in the bright sunlight are crisply defined and hard edged, and then the ones that are in the shadow, fuzzing, okay, because they're more vague, the mystery in the shadow. Same thing with the figure over here, fuzzing into that shadow area. You don't want that to be too defined. The mystery's in the shadow, okay. The definition is in the sunlight, the bright, crisp, hard edges. So making sure you have that balance throughout this whole scene. And there's just example after example of these absolutely gorgeous edges. The negative shapes, okay? Nothing was masked in here. I love the, the kind of the negative painted around and just suggested. It's not even close to being that accurate here, okay? This is not a straight line. Nothing in here is perfect and straight. He doesn't care about that. It's important, if you want a little bit of a looser painting, that you learn to embrace a little bit of those inaccuracies, okay? So again, the edge quality, crisp, fine edges, lost edges. The bottom of the bridge is almost a lost edge with what's behind it. You have the little highlight on the top of it, the crisp edge, okay? Once again, the shadow part of the bridge and the sunlit part of the bridge, the difference of where you want that definition. So to have the the facility to go around this painting and just hit things at the precise moment. I mean, there's no way it's dry here and wet here and dry there and wet there. It has to, at some point, there's areas that are, the whole painting is going to be either damp or very dry. And just to know the exact right timing of when you can come in and you need a crisp edge here. You have to wait for this all to dry, right? But you don't want it to wait till dry too much in some of these other areas to define these things and make sure you're getting a nice color transition going up that way. To be able to paint this darker reflection in the water here so that this is a soft edge, but this is a hard edge on those steps. All those decisions that have to be made depending on what type of an edge that you want, and the timing of this is insane, and that's what makes watercolor just an incredible challenge as a medium. But again, Trevor is just so experienced, and this is again, I love the fact, a 7x10 painting, okay? And I talk about this a lot in my workshops and studies. The fact that he's not doing this as a big full sheet painting, it's a very small painting, and that allows him the time to be able to make some of these thoughtful decisions and control it with his brush. He's not frantically working on a big half sheet with a mop brush trying to jump over here and jump over there. And okay, so I love the fact that he paints these small, elegant little jewels, and they're just so beautifully handled. And again, a lot of that is due to the fact that he's not racing all over a large half sheet watercolor painting. So that excellent variety of edges, shapes, I started to touch on that a little bit already with the shapes of the boats and things, but suggesting all these different types of shapes that he has in here with his brush. You can barely even see a pencil mark in here, which is remarkable as well. I'm sure he drew a little bit of it, but again, just being able to embrace the fact that these shapes don't have to be perfect. The negative shape making that you do with painting the darker hulls of the boats and the wall above there to get that shape, and I'm using that as a definition. This little balcony up here, just I stare at that sometimes and just ask myself, would I ever have painted it that loosely, that suggestively, but it looks so accurate down to the little bit of a shadow edge on the bottom of it. It makes it look like a solid form that you could go out and stand up on there. It doesn't just end. Okay, you're seeing a little bit of the bottom part of that balcony, and the little railings, the gaps in the railings are just suggested. It's odd that they angle up, but for some reason when you look at it, it looks so accurate. All those little shapes that he paints are absolutely incredible. The shapes of these shadows, I love those shapes sweeping down onto the wall just quickly and gesturally. That's a rapid little brush stroke right there down there, but it just seems to be the absolute right angle and shape and length and everything that he managed to get there. So and again, these shapes that you're seeing up here were obviously just knocked in very quickly with his brush. The interior, suggesting the interior of that boat, same thing. All those little shapes that he painted in there, not 100% accurately, but accurately enough to really give yourself a sense of the wooden interior of that boat, showing those little slats in there. I just love, and I already talked about the stairway too. That's just such a cool little area that he managed to paint down there. And again, I noticed in the stairways when I'm looking at this, I just keep noticing more all the time, this middle value kind of a shape that he has that defines the stair itself. And then, right, this is on top of it, this little bit of a dark to define that a little bit more than what you have up here, but it's a hard edge there, but it's blending here. That kind of stuff just blows me away. When I look at this painting and the more I study it, just little things like that, being able to come in. He must have come in with a damp brush and kind of softened some of that after he put that in, because this is obviously crisper and darker than the areas around it put in on top of it. And must have done some of that up here with the boat as well, trying to work that reflection into those areas. So awesome shape making. And none of these boats are the same size, angle. Okay, this one's a little longer, this one's a little shorter. Those two brightly lit boats, this one's tilted up a little bit more so you can see more of the interior of it. This one's flatter, this one's poking out into the sunlight, this one's again kind of facing us, a little bit tilting up, not as much as the other one. Okay, this one's tilted off to the side a little bit more. Every one of those boats is different, and I talk about the importance of that too. When you're painting a harbor full of boats, too often it just happens. It's the way our brains going to our hand. It's very logical, and you start making the same boat, 4 or 5 times. Every one of these boat shapes is unique, and again, that is super important. And then last but not least, balance. It's kind of a little bit more of an abstract kind of a concept when you're talking about this, but and that again, it kind of goes back to the shapes that I'm talking about in here. But also when you look at this, sorry for all the squiggles, but to balance things out, you've got this boat over here, the dark boats are over here in shadow, okay, most of them, but you've got one over here that's under the bridge, so it's also in shadow, okay, right? So that helps to balance. They're not all sun. All these other boats over here are catching some sun. The fact that this one boat over here is in the shadow of the bridge helps to balance these two sides out remarkably. Same thing back here. All these light boats right on this side, but there's one back here in the distance that's catching some sunlight, balancing those two sides off together. Okay, the color that I talked about, balancing off. This color, this violet, it's almost the same violet way down here, balancing those areas. This ochre or whatever, that umber, or I'm sorry, burnt sienna kind of a color, is balanced on the wall here. The glow of the wall balanced down in the reflection, and even some into the interior of the boats. Okay, so you've got all those wonderful balancing colors going around here. That's important. And then the balance of the shapes. Okay, you've got all these strong verticals, these poles coming up out of the water, the sides of the building, the windows, the side of the building over here. Okay, all these kind of really strong verticals going all the way up from bottom to top, right? But they're balanced with these horizontals, the shape of the bridge, the horizontal kind of flat shapes of the boats. The boats are a little bit more curvilinear to balance the strong geometric forms that are going up all the way along on the sides of the buildings and things. So, and even that little bit of a curve on that balcony there to balance the windows that are going up vertically. So balance, that variety of shape is so important too. Everything just works beautifully in harmony. Hi, my name's Andy Evansen. Over the course of this year, I'll be discussing a lot of ways to improve your paintings with a focus on watercolor in particular. Watercolor is a popular medium, but there are technical issues that can become stumbling blocks during the learning process. Painting becomes a lot more fun once you solve them and can start refining your craft. I'll cover topics that are unique to watercolor, such as painting wet and wet, the timing and consistency of your washes, the importance of drawing and negative shape making, and more. I'll also be talking a lot about how vital it is to have a plan. The transparent nature of watercolor means you're limited in the amount of fixing you can do once you've started, and indecisiveness, that's what leads to the weak, muddy paintings. Because this course spans a calendar year, you'll be able to see me painting outdoors on location as well as in the studio. We can talk about the differences and similarities of both. I've taught dozens of 3 to 5 day workshops, and most of the time, just as students are starting to figure things out, it's time to say goodbye. This course through Tucson Art Academy Online allows me to work with you for an entire year, so we'll be able to get into things that just aren't possible in a 4-day workshop. As an artist who also loves to teach, I'm really excited about the possibilities of this. I hope you'll join me.